Welcome back. Today we're going to look at deploying a real-world JavaScript application to Kubernetes with Jetpack. Here's our application, and we can see how we can click on each airplane and it will show us the details of that plane. So this one hails from Ireland. Here's the call sign of that plane, its lat and long, its altitude, and it looks like it might be descending a little bit. We can see other planes. This one looks like it might have been just leaving Madrid, and so it's accelerating. So we can take a look at lots of different planes here. We see some have landed, and we can cruise around through the entire world looking at the planes that are live right now. Well, how does this application work? Here's this application up on GitHub, so you can go to github.com/jetpackio/JavaScript planes to use this Jetpack planes sample application and replicate these results. Here's the architecture of this application. We have the Open Sky API that shows planes as they're flying over right now. We have a cron job that periodically queries that API and saves the data in a cache. A REST API queries the data out of the cache and makes it available to this web application that we can see in the browser. Let's take a look at the code. Here's our map component that shows the map. Thank you to Leaflet for making this map possible. And we can see that we get the data out of our Flux store. So flipping over to our Flux store, we can see that this data gets into the store by querying /API/flight. Let's flip over to our backend and go to /routes/flight. And we'll query the data out of Redis and return that as JSON back to the client. How does it get into Redis? Well, we have a cron job that runs periodically, and this cron job will go grab the flight data, it'll pivot it a little bit, filter out invalid data, and save that to Redis. This query goes straight to the Open Sky API, and we're just pivoting it because the format coming out of Open Sky is just a big array. So this cron will run every minute and go grab new data. So let's see how easy it is to get it to Kubernetes. We've got it running locally. So let's stop it running locally. Here's our Redis. We'll stop the back end. We'll stop the front end. And now let's get started with Jetpack. I've already got the Jetpack CLI installed, so I don't need to do that. I'm going to say Jetpack init. Jetpack init will interview us and understand more about our application to configure it appropriate for deploying to Kubernetes. By default, it grabbed the name of our folder, JavaScript, but I want to name this Jetpack Planes. Is it a web server? Yes, it is. Do I want it to be publicly accessible from the internet? Yes, I do. Now, we can choose to deploy to our own Kubernetes cluster. In this case, I'm going to use the Jetpack.io provided cluster. Now, we've written this jetconfig.yaml, and we should commit this to our source code repository. Now that we've got the jetconfig, let's start it up in Kubernetes. Jetpack dev. Now first we'll do a quick Docker build to be able to get our content into a container. We'll upload that container into a private registry. And now we'll start it inside of Kubernetes using the Jetpack runtime. Now that our application is running inside Kubernetes, we see the publicly available URL. We also see that it proxies both the application and the cron job as well. We'll see the streaming logs coming back to our console. Let's go to this public URL and take a look at our application running inside of Kubernetes with Jetpack. So let's take a look at our real-world JavaScript application running inside of Kubernetes. Now, we've got the same wonderful experience. We can cruise through all of the planes in the world, and let's take a look at this plane. Looks like this plane flags from Germany. Here's its call sign, its latitude and longitude, its altitude, and it looks like it's not going up or down. Excellent. We've got another plane that has landed here, and it looks like this plane came from Spain. Now we can see the logs streaming in from our application. Oh, it looks like we don't have some icons in our application. Great, we can use that to fix our code. We can also take a look at the Kubernetes resources that we have. We can see not only do we have the pods running for our application, but we also have the scheduled jobs that runs. For example, the cron job that runs every minute. It's easy to get started deploying JavaScript applications to Kubernetes with Jetpack.io. Learn more at jetpack.io/docs, or grab this code sample at github.com/jetpack-io/javascript-planes. Thanks for watching.